Hi, I am Agnès Etamé, International Project Manager at NatExpo. We are delighted to be with you for this second NatExpo webinar, specifically dedicated to international business. We launched this webinar in March 21, and they have established themselves as a monthly meeting place for the NatExpo community between two trade fairs. Each month, during 1 hour live broadcast, experts and professionals from the organic sectors discuss the latest news. In total, nearly 3,500 views last year. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to newcomers and regulars. More than 500 of you signed for this reboot. So, two very brief words about SPACE organization. It's a company that was founded more than 14 years ago by Violette and Claude Dumont and taken over by Patricia Berthomier-Massip in 2010. SPACE has become the leading organizer in France of B2B and B2C events dedicated to organic well-being and sustainable development. Today, SPACE has about 30 events, more than 500,000 visitors and 6,000 exhibitors. Concerning NatExpo, this is the 8th edition of NatExpo that we have organized since NatExBio put its trust in us in 2013. Over the years, we have seen it grow, become legitimate, and become essential. This next session of NatExpo will take place from 18 to 20 September at Eurespo Lyon. This year, we're expecting 850 exhibitors and 10,000 professional visitors, French and international. On the international side, we work with companies directly or with agencies promoting the organic sector in each country. And today we have countries as such: Germany, Spain, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, Austria. The idea is to seize growth opportunity in the French markets, but not only that, we also receive almost 13% of international visitors. We cover the organic sectors with food, cosmetics, food supplements, ingredients, eco-products, eco-services, equipment and service for the shop, but also for the brands. This year, we are creating a new sector dedicated to e-commerce, and as well, Epure, a new tract dedicated to high-end organic cosmetics. That is for this dance, but there is also plenty to do in terms of animation, with about 10 thematic forums to discuss trends, to know the market, to anticipate consumers' expectations, and to highlight the innovation of the sectors. We'll give you the floor to Sylvia Smith, Policy Association Manager to IFOAM Organics Europe, who will introduce herself, the speakers for the day, and lead the debates. We are, of course, at your disposal to answer your question. The chat is open.
Thank you very much, Agnès. And good morning to all also from my side. So as Agnès said, I'm Sylvia Schmidt. I work for IFOAM Organics Europe, the European Association for Organic Food and Farming. And I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating this webinar today, organized by NatExpo, which will be about local versus international. What market for international processors? We have two speakers today, which will really allow us to go deep into this topic. So don't hesitate to ask any questions on the chat. We will be delighted to reply to them towards the end of this webinar. So a couple of introductory words from my side. So we all know that local short supply chains is really a lot, a buzzword at this moment. And we have seen that the sales of local products has increased by 6% between June 2020 and May 2021. And in France, consumers say when a survey is conducted that they would like to buy more local products. And this tendency of wanting to buy more local has only exacerbated with the pandemic. Another survey result that I wanted to share with you is from a EU-wide survey of among more than 1,000 consumers that was conducted in the summer of 2020, where consumers, when asked what in their view is a healthy and sustainable diet, 50% of them replied that it is about eating more local, more seasonal products. A third of them replied that it is about eating organic products. Also politically, we see that local is higher up on the political agenda. So for instance, in the farm to fork strategy, which you will have heard about, it's this communication, this initiative of the European Commission to holistically achieve more sustainable food systems. Well, this farm to fork strategy acknowledges that the calls for shorter supply chains have intensified during the current outbreak. So we all agree that local clearly has advantages. I'm thinking here of local public procurement, of community-supported agriculture, especially when it comes to fresh products such as fruits and vegetables. As IFOM Organics Europe, we advocate for more local products, but we do it carefully because local doesn't also imply anything about the method of production. So you could have a local product that isn't particularly environmentally friendly or that doesn't really look into the social aspect of food production. So externalities could be higher for a local product than if you factor in, for instance, the transport that would be required to have an organic product. So what we will be doing today is really a timely and interesting discussion about looking a bit at this other side, let's say, of local. We will address topics that are usually not focused on too much when we speak about local and short supply chains. So namely, what happens when local is not the best option or not an option at all? So I'm thinking here about coffee and chocolate and so on. And this surge of, let's say, local and short supply chains, what space does it leave for products from abroad? And how can firms communicate, if anything, that they are supplying from abroad? So today we have international organic firms involved in sourcing from local producers that will tell us a bit what their strategy is when it comes to local. So we have Arthur Petry from Lemonade, and we have Olivier Pot-au-Feu from Ecolive. So first I'd like for both of you to present yourself a bit and what you do. So let's start with Arthur. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sylvia and Agnes, for the opportunity. So as you said, I'm Arthur Petry. I work for Lemonade and Charity, and I'm responsible for the international development of the brand. We're a German startup or a German company. Should I go a bit more in details, or
maybe we can have Olivier present himself, and then we go a bit more in detail into both of your companies.
Hi, so good morning to all. So thank you too for this opportunity. So I'm Olivier Pot-au-Feu, so co-founder of Ecolive. So I created this company 12 years ago with my friend, Greg. Yeah, so we are based in France, but we are also based in Germany and in Benelux.
Okay, thank you to both. So you both have really impressive stories of growth, both at Lemonade and Ecolive. So could you share a bit these stories of growth and inspirational stories with us, and particularly also your business model, especially for you, Arthur Petry, but also for you, Olivier Pot-au-Feu. I found it quite interesting looking at the Lemonade website that you really sort of decided to bring the Lemonade stand at a very high level. So I thought that was quite an interesting concept. So perhaps you can tell us a bit more also about the projects you support via your this business model.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, so funny when looking at local versus international, Lemonade, the whole concept is buy local, or not in the definition that we might have today. Our idea, or the original of the idea, is to buy from the global south. The concept behind it is to, of course, only buy products that are not available in Europe. So you mentioned coffee and chocolate, but The same can apply to tea, which we source, rooibos, some exotic fruits such as mango, passion fruit, and so forth. But the idea behind Lemonade and Charity is to try to restore the economical balance to global trade. The idea that we witnessed inequalities, historical inequalities, and the idea was to say, okay, there are some ingredients that you cannot find here. We are now in a globalized world, and so people stop buying tea or buying coffee. So what we do is that we try to find the best organic and fair trade ingredients from small-scale communities, and those ingredients we bring back to Germany, and then we create a natural product. So it's iced teas, it's lemonades, and the idea is so through those, I would say, international standards that are organic and fair trade, we already have a certain value that we put to the product. But on top of that, the idea of Lemonade and Charity is that for every bottle sold, we reinvest 5 cents, so we give back 5 cents to our own foundation, which finances development projects in the local communities where the ingredients come from. And this money that we raise is then reinvested in infrastructure projects, in economical empowerment, vocational training, in different entrepreneurial skill building places. The idea is that all the projects that we finance are emerging from those local communities. So in a way, we create an added value to a product from a region, and we reinvest that value back into those communities through the local actors. And I think this is the way, or one of the ways, or the one that at least we found to balance a bit more the exchange that were previously south to north. Now the idea is to try to create a bigger exchange. And to give you an idea, so we've been doing it for the past 10 years, a little bit over 10 years, and to date we've raised over 6 million euros for local projects, and we've supported over the years over 45 projects. And so the system that we fund normally is that we evaluate projects and we finance them for a period of time between 1 to 3 years and up to 150,000 euros for the period. And so we provide the funds, but we also provide technical support to those initiatives. So they come to us saying, okay, we have this or that project, and we then accompany them into realizing it or scaling it up. And just to give you one example of a current project that we're financing. We're financing the Dream Factory Foundation in Cape Town in South Africa. So in South Africa, we source the rooibos, which can only grow in South Africa, and in this region, the Cederberg over there. And the idea there is that the Dream Factory Foundation helps empower young women through entrepreneurship, business, and digital skills training. So it's people between the age of 18 to 25 that apply to the program, and they receive 1 year training focusing on digital technologies, business development, entrepreneurship, and personal skills. And so this is a way to reinvest and empower. And funnily enough, so we use the agricultural sector to create an additional value, and then we reinvest it in other sectors of the economy. It doesn't have to be all towards the agricultural sector.
It's extremely interesting and impressive, and that also shows the interlinkages between, the agricultural sector and so many other sectors. It's a beautiful way of showing that. So Olivier, now on to you. Can you give us a practical example of how Ecolive has supported organic companies to, reach new heights?
Yeah. So first, Ecolive is a service provider. So we are working for companies in order to increase their sales. So in their countries or abroad. So most of the time, so it's on the German market and on the French market. And so to be able to give some positive results, so one of our main target is to propose the right product. So it's very important to give legitimacy So that's why. So when we are sourcing brands, or when we are looking for new brands, so we are looking for something really special. So for example, if I want to sell sardines, I have to go to Brittany and to find some supplier which are based in Brittany and producing there. So if you want to sell, let's say, brioche, so here in Vendée, so we have plenty of producers which are also able to produce it. So, and this is this kind of, let's say, concept that we can export with legitimacy, because when you are in Germany, so there are no sardines producers. So that's this kind of big topic for us. On the other side, sometimes it's also important to look for companies or brands which are pioneer, so which are producing maybe since 30 to 40 years, so which have like this small, so, or let's say big additional value, which will give you the legitimacy to reach a target or a market. And in this kind of, with this kind of product, then so local make no sense most of the time. I mean, they are producing local, but they will export. So they want to expand. But for the final consumer, then at the end, it's not really seen as a local product. So that would be seen as a specialty or as a very legitimate product. But yeah, it's another, maybe, let's say, way of thinking that. And in order to help these brands, we decided to create local team. So here that means, so we are exporting a product, but to achieve these targets, to meet the buyers, to convince them, so we need to have some people in the team which are from the countries and which will push the brand and explain it, so with the right word and so on. So this is, let's say, the both strategy. So finding the right product and having the right team on the place, so directly on the target market.
Great, that's really interesting to hear. Also, this idea of having the local team, so actually creating job opportunities in the local markets. Okay, so now let's really go into the center and the focus of this webinar. You have both spoken about local and your approach to local. What does local actually mean in your view? Is there a definition of local? Do you think it's, a region, or is it a distance? How would you define local in your work? And let's start with Olivier this time.
For me, of course, this is my opinion. So having something local, so that means it's a company which is based, let's say, 200 kilometers far away from where I'm living, and which is also using raw materials or raw ingredients also from the same region. Let's say 80 to 90% of the ingredients, maybe. So that would be my definition of local.
I think, as you say, it's a bit of a tricky concept. It's an evolving one. As you mentioned, is it a certain kilometer radius? Is it defined by a certain culture? Is it nationality? Is it borders? For me, the way I see it, and probably it doesn't encompass the whole topic, but local, or the attractiveness of local, stems from the failure of global trade. Like, in the sense that people have lost confidence because of shortcuts that companies in the past have used. So for me, local, I to transparency, traceability, accountability of the supply chain. So local, because then what defines, you can buy your tomatoes from the gardener next door, but then if you live in, let's say, in Lyon, you could still buy oysters from Brittany, and this would be considered local. So where then do you put the line? So this is why I think it's more of a philosophical debate, or a reactionary definition to something that was wrong in the global trade.
That's a good point. And digging deeper into this topic, so you also spoke, Arthur, about transparency, traceability that is linked to local. And indeed, I think that many consumers, including myself, tend to go for local products and favor local products because there is this more direct link with the producer. So there is this idea that there is more transparency when you buy local products. So what do you think about this concept, actually? So does local mean, automatically more transparency? Does local mean fraud-free? We talk a lot about frauds at the moment in several different instances. Does it, does local mean fraud-free, or are we safe from fraud if we buy local? What do you think? Maybe Arthur now to start.
Definitely not. I think the answer is in the question. No, I mean there's fraud everywhere, and it's unfortunate. But I think local gives you maybe a reassurance when it comes to a full sense of reassurance. But like local is a trendy word. You use the mention buzzword at the beginning, and so with this, or with the trending system, then it means that there's more and more people interested in it. So it potentially brings more money into the mix, and more money means also more possibilities of shortcuts and fraud in the next sense. So I don't think we're completely avoiding fraud with the local, and I'm sure Olivier has examples in his work on this, but I would imagine that it's a little bit the same system that we use for a label. We should be, it's a good thing to think local, especially for products that are available around you, and for non-transformed products as we talked about earlier. But people, consumers, should also have a responsibility to look a little bit deeper. Like any other labels, you have to. It's one thing to say I buy local, but then please look into. It's our responsibilities, like as consumer, to actually look beyond that. To say, okay, it's local, and because I decided to source local tomatoes, it's a good thing. But it's my responsibility to make sure, and it's the company's responsibility to be as transparent as possible to prove this.
It's true that I mean, for fresh, so vegetables and fruits and so on, so local is, I would say, the most important. So it's the key mark. It's the key. So it's the target. So we should also consume fruit and veg, so fresh product from our region. But as you said, so fraud is very hard to control, and we need to, I would say, try to control it. So, and thanks to chains, so to retailer and so on. So, we have like an additional guarantee. We know that they are doing the job. But if we are multiplicating, so the point of sales and so on, so how can we control it? So we clearly see that there are also a huge amount of fraud, so worldwide. So when you are talking about tomato sauce and a lot of products, and there are some controls. So when you are crossing the borders, and here there is a beginning of frauds. You can imagine there is also a lot of other frauds in the countries. So we need to be very careful with this topic. I would advise you to, there is a book which is written from Ingrid Kragel, so Manger du faux pour de vrai. So it's talking about frauds, and just in France, you'll see how crazy it is. It's amazing. So and yeah, in my opinion, so once you are talking about processed food and so on, so we need to be really careful. Other big topic, so honey, for example. So this is one of the most fraudulent products. So it's very hard to get it from your region, but you'll find it everywhere. So how can you control it? So as a consumer, I will trust a brand, I will trust a name, so because they are involving themselves. But yeah, so very, very complicated topic.
Yes, and also legally quite difficult. I think in the food information to consumers legislation, the origin is the one that is where the item was last processed. So clearly, you were talking about tomato sauce, and there are all these cases where the tomato comes from China in some way, or was processed in China, and then the last step was done in Italy, and so it's an Italian sauce, and consumers really rely on that, and they really think it's a completely Italian sauce. Well, that's not entirely the case. But so let's let's move also a bit into how companies should communicate about local or not. And I'll tell you, just this weekend, I was in a organic supermarket in Belgium, which is called Farm. It's great. If you live in Belgium, you should go there. They have also the Farm Brut, which is about bulk products. It's just really great. But what I was doing there is that I wanted to buy tomatoes, and I know tomatoes it's not in season, but I'm Italian and I needed them for some dish. And so I went to the tomato stand, and I was actually surprised to see that the tomato was from Spain and not from from Belgium, because I know that that farm really looks, at the local side of things. And what I found really interesting is that I was probably not the first one thinking this, and they had put a sign showing really the CO2 emissions linked to either a tomato from Belgium that would have been, of course, grown in a greenhouse because we're in February, or a tomato from Spain. And the difference was incredible. And so in this case, it really made more sense from an environmental perspective to actually have the tomato from Spain than to have the tomato from Belgium. Of course, the ideal world is that I wouldn't have even wanted to buy tomatoes, but I'm not there yet. But okay, so you both work with work with international companies that source from local producers. So how do you communicate, or how do you advise to communicate about ingredient sourcing? Should companies communicate that they're sourcing from local producers, but that ingredient travels a lot? Or what are your views on communication to consumers about local? Arthur, maybe first.
All right. Yeah, I know the farm. We also we work with them in Belgium, but I think the issue, which you mentioned with the tomatoes is telling. The one thing when we talk about local is, of course, and I see some people talk about this, the CO2 footprint, and it makes sense that you should either stop buying tomato in winter, or at least try to find the most sustainable way to do it. But I think we're still in a global system. For years and years, we've been having access to a lot of different products all over the world, and we've done it in not so positive ways in the past. It was not the best possible exchanges. And so does it mean today that we have to look inwards and stop consuming coffee, consuming tea? This for me is not the solution. So when I speak about local, I respect local sourcing of local products, but for firms companies like ours, the idea is that to try to not negate the historicity of the exchange and try to improve them. And so for us to remain pertinent in this game, we have to be transparent. As you say, communication is the key, because for me, what I was saying is that, of course, if you take outside the ratio, kilometer ratio, or from the product, if you define products that are not available around yourselves, then the next question that the consumer will have is, where does it come from? Who produced it? How did it arrive to my place? And I can tell you the key with us was to know the farmers as well as we would know them if they were actually our neighbors. So and very few, or too few companies today have this approach to sourcing. It doesn't matter. Technology already today gives you the availability to talk to the world. So there should be no excuses to actually not know who you work with. And you're able to travel if you can to visit them. This is what we do. We've been in touch with them. We grew with them for the past 10 years. And it is key for us to remain pertinent, to be able to share that story. Because yes, my consumer might be buying its tomatoes from around, might be buying its oysters from somewhere else. But when it comes to tea, I think it makes sense for him to know that he will have access to the same information about the tomatoes than it will have from the tea. And this is something that I, as a company, am obliged to provide. Because if not, there's no change into what happened before. And on top of that is also to understand, what does it mean buying tea from this community to the community? Because I could very easily go and buy tea from a cheaper place around the world and continue unbalanced system. So I think, for us to remain our role as international companies is, one, to not negate the past and to say, okay, there's something that was done in a certain way, we have to do it differently. And the second is to say, at least let's be as transparent as possible. Show the consumers that we have nothing to hide, that everything is accountable. And I think this is the key for any company to survive, no matter the topic, local versus international.
Very good points, and indeed, transparency today is key. I would agree with that. Olivier, on this topic.
I totally agree. So transparency is the most important. So as you said, so Arthur, so when you are buying goods or products from abroad, so you need to show so that each aspect is worked, and that you can just give all the information needed, so nothing is hidden. So you as you said, so the farmers, so you are working on every aspect of the product. So the footprint and so on. I mean, we are working for organic brands, so it belongs to our DNA also. So to reduce the footprint. So that was the question. So in the chat, but yeah. So if you are working locally with producer and so with farmers and so on, and then if you are exporting the product, the final product, so in the country, so in my opinion, so there is no problem. So I tried. So that was in Germany. So to introduce a brand from Italy, from Sicily. So they were producing almond paste, almond butter. So with almond from Italy, and the competitors were German brands, which are doing a great job. But I mean, they are importing then the almonds. So then, what is the key? What is the solution? So I mean, sending a product which is processed, ready to sell from the country, or to import the good and to prepare it from on the region. Where do you create the value? Sorry, it's also more complicated than it looks like. So it's a strategy we need to follow. So and I mean, at the end, so this is the customer who decide almost. So we need to follow what they want, and yeah, it's sometimes quite complicated.
And I see, I'm looking at the chat a bit, and I'm happy to see the lively discussion. And I see one comment from Florian Mosselin. He says that that international transport in the end represent 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, while the agricultural sectors represent about 35%, including indirect emissions. And actually, there was a research from ADEME showing that more than 80% of the impact of a food product is actually from the farm, so from the agricultural side. So in the end, the transportation and so on does account for less than what we commonly would think. I see that there are some questions in the chat, which is great. We'll be replying to them in about 10-15 minutes. What I wanted to do now is look a bit at obstacles. So I find it really interesting when there are companies such as yours that have really had this tremendous growth and this tremendous acceptance by either other companies or consumers. And so my first question about obstacles would be, what was the main obstacles in your growth, in the growth that you have experienced? And the second is, what is the main obstacles that you face when you source ingredients from local producers that might then not be local in terms of the market that you sell the products within? I hope my question was clear. Arthur, would you like to give it a go?
Yes. So about the obstacles, I think as I explained earlier, the obstacle, or I mean the key, is to provide transparent visibility to the consumer, and I think there was an idea around this where we have to work together hands in hands with global standards, certifications, because it's true. Like, I mean, what you expect from an agriculture next door might be different from what you think you can expect from agriculture in another part of the world. And I think this is why you have the first step, which is the general certifications. It's not perfect, and this I'm the first one to say so, but it provides a little bit of a main framework in which the consumer can step in. And from then on, as a company, your duty is not to just simply blindly trust certifications, but go beyond. And so this is the way in which we I think, overcome the first obstacle, which is to say, okay, here is a certification standard, understand, and on top of that, as a company, we communicate into what we do above from this certification or in complementarily to this certification. And I would say the biggest issues that we faced, of course, this past years was the difficulty of availabilities, of travel, I mean, it's become a nightmare logistically. I mean, every company has been impacted by this, so both in terms of availability of products, in terms of terms, price of transport. So this was very hard, and on top of that, even more for us as a company, the biggest obstacle was we lost the capacity to be in touch as closely as we were before to our partners because there was no travel allowed. It was much harder to get in touch. Foundation-wise, it was also very tough for them to continue supporting projects on the ground when the local problematics were no longer than one of alternative economical development, but more direct sustainability. And so us as a foundation, we had to shift a little bit our project structure to be able to respond to the emergency of people not being able to work as they were before, and not being able to meet or get training as they did before. So I think this were the biggest challenges. But I'm happy to see that this is a little bit behind us in a way. Like, I mean, we're definitely not out of the woods, but that there is some positive signs here, and that we've done our best to be able to bridge those or to pass those obstacles.
Thank you. And Olivier, what about your obstacles?
So for us as a service provider, so one of the biggest obstacles right now is so while we are meeting buyers and so on, so the first reaction would be, is it made in France while we are in France, or is it made in Germany while we are in Germany? And for a company which is specialized in import-export, of course, so this is the obstacle. So for that reason, so we change a bit of our model. So we are working for more and more French companies in France and German companies in Germany with the export on top, so as an additional service, because most of the companies, they want to go forward, so they want to export, they want to expand. So and yeah, so for that, the pandemic impacted us quite a lot, I have to say. So but it's fine. I mean, I really understand. So when the customer are looking for a product which is made in France, it's really cool. So it's a good way of thinking. We just need to go deeper and deeper, maybe to write on each packaging, so where are each raw material or ingredients coming from. So maybe we need to be more transparent on the stickers, so on the branding, and so on and so on. So we need to show where each product is coming from. There are some producers which are already doing it. So it's very cool. So we need to go in this way, but it's complicated. It's complicated. So if you are producing soups, for example, you want to do it just from your region. So most of the time, so when you are mixing 5 different ingredients, they are not growing in the same region, or they are not growing at the same time. So there are always complications. So in terms of processing and so on. And yeah, there are many obstacles and many challenges.
Can I add to what Olivier just said? Yes, I mean, it's impossible. It's complicated for all of us, because I mean, you don't want your product to read like a novel. I mean, yes, if you want to explain everything that we're discussing about, how do you do so? And I think this is why we have to be also understanding that the responsibility lies also with the consumer. Like you can point two directions, and we have to trust that the consumer in the end will go and take that extra step to look into what this means. Because if you are required as a company to detailedly describe everything that you do, there will be no place anymore for the product. Or I imagine a suit with everything written in it, or a bottle which would be completely impossible to read. So I think the responsibility is furthermore just the companies, of course, have this transparency responsibility, but I think local, civil society, people, the press, media, governments, I don't know, would also have to educate people into challenging, not the system, but challenging their idées reçues. They need to go and look a bit deeper into what they purchase. They need to make the last step, because we cannot spoon feed the whole narrative to them, and it would then be impossible, and it would lead to so much greenwashing type of frauds that it wouldn't make sense.
And have you, as companies or as advising companies, seen firsthand any changes in purchasing behavior from consumers with the pandemic? Maybe Olivier first, if you have something to add.
You mean changing habits from the consumer? Hard to say. I mean, yes, I guess. Data, so numbers are talking. I mean, we see that local is increasing, but as we are working for brands with a very high legitimacy, so we still are growing, so while exporting. But we are very, very careful in each discussion with buyers and so on and so on. So we know that it's very risky. So if there are, if there is a new competitors from the region, from the country and so on, so they should maybe switch easily. But from a consumer point of view, hard to describe for me.
Your experience?
Yeah, I think I follow what Olivier is saying. Like, yes, we do. I mean, I've been walking the streets in France for lemonade for the past 7 years, and there is, of course, more. I would say for us, maybe less consumer. I might not be able to say, but at least more shops that will provide or label themselves local or French, and there's more of those. But at the same time, we're seeing an immense growth in development of our product in Europe, for example. So there is, I think, the market is growing towards more ethical aspects. So in the end, it's good, but it's part of a bigger movement, which means, I think, more and more sensible approach to purchasing, to sourcing, in which we have our place. And I think this is why we're trying, as a company, as Lemonade, we're trying to be careful not to. We're not working against any local producers. Our approach is very specific, and the whole foundation system is built so that we actually, in a way, don't have that many competitors, and we don't have any competitors in this particular sector. So we're seen as an added value. And for this, we're quite lucky.
There is another aspect. So this is what is the customer ready to accept. So this acceptation, I mean, we are talking about the product, about the fraud risk, so the footprint, so there are many topics, but at the end, so is the customer so ready to pay for it also? I mean, sometimes the local production would be way more expensive, sometimes not, let's say, but in comparison to a bigger, let's say, so industry or brand, so sometimes there is a huge difference in terms of price. And is the customer, or are every customer ready to accept it? So this is also a big question for the future. So we saw it. So in a couple of years ago, so we had some waffles from Belgium, so made with every raw material except the sugar were from the region, with fresh butter and so on. That was the best waffle on the market. Okay, for each package you had to pay around 6 to 7 euros, when the competitors with a international raw material, so you had the same product for 99 cents. And guess what? So at the end, what was selling more? So as I say, it's difficult, but there are some customers who are looking for this regional product from this local product, but there are also a lot of others who are first looking for something which is organic and which is, let's say, not too expensive. So it's also a very difficult decision to take sometimes, but we need to keep an eye on what the customer are looking for.
Okay. Can I also add to this? Yeah, I think this is the key, the pricing, and it's an open door to fraud or to abuses of the system. It's not because it's organic or because it's local or because it's fairly sourced. Then the product has to be priced at so high a price point. The whole aim, and it's maybe a bit utopian, but it's trying to reward fairly every single actor in the chain. But it doesn't mean that you use the excuse of underpaying your producer, whether it's in France or in Sri Lanka, by selling a product that is either local or organic, and that in the end, this is why I think transparency is the key word in this. Like transparency in the value added, the added value in the whole chain, to understand that yes, every producer has to be paid in the right way, and this to change from the past, and then that no one actually gets more greedy than his counterpart. And I think this, in the end, should re-equilibrate the balance, because the problem is that even for French producers or German producers, there's always the call to try to reduce to the minimum the end price to the consumer, and it cannot happen that producers here get the short end of the stick, while you're trying to raise at the same time the price for producers elsewhere in the world. So I think the key to working on this is, again, transparency.
Yeah, and I think this ties in massively also with the whole idea of the true cost of food. You know, currently it's a lot cheaper to produce in a way that actually damages the environment and is not socially fair in any way. So this is really key in terms of also policies that could be made to rebalance. You were talking about this disequilibrium. It's true, to rebalance the way we farm. Okay. So thank you for those rich interventions. And now I just want to look a bit at the chat, because we really have some interesting comments. So one that I wanted to mention that is key and that has been liked quite a lot by you is that that there's this confusion between seasonality and local, and that seasonality should be the key to sustainable sourcing. And it's true that we see that as well in policies that are, or initiatives that are linked to food procurement. Otherwise, one of the questions that has also been quite spoken about in the chat is this whole idea of transparency and consumer information. And you have already addressed it a bit, but perhaps we could look into it a bit more. So, at least at EU level at this moment, we have initiatives for a nutrition label, for a sustainability label that should include the environmental, the social aspects. And so how are we going to put all that on a packaging? Isn't that going to be very confusing for consumers? And, how can consumers make the right decision? And that was a question from Karen Says, and we have a reply to Karen, which is about that it should be, we should use technology for that we should use digital product identity card. So for instance, Yuka or Siga, that I actually don't know, or others could help in that. And before I give you the floor to reply to this really complex question at the moment, I think it's also important to realize that the method that is used to calculate the environmental impact of a certain product is also extremely, it's key actually, because a certain method could show that we see methods that show that actually organic products are not that good for the environment, and that intensive products are better for the environment. And you can make a tool measure anything you want, basically. So it's also really difficult to decide, okay, what am I going to put behind such a label? What is the calculation method that I'm going to put behind such a label? But okay, so perhaps Olivier, you want to give it a go for this really complex topic of how to provide information to consumers in a way that isn't overflooding them, but at the same time is truthful.
Very complicated. So as you said, so having too much logos or certification on the etiquettes and so on is probably not the best idea. I mean, too many information is dangerous. Of course, you have to use your website. You have to use the different tools. We talked about Yuka, communication. So I mean, with all of the social media and so on, so it's quite easy to communicate. At the end, in my opinion, so the policy, so the strategy from the company must be very, very clear. So it must be an easy policy, clear to understand for everybody, and yeah, communication. So we have QR codes, we have plenty of tools to use, but we need for that, I mean, the customer must be also interested in. So if the customer is not looking for the information, so in my opinion, so it will be very hard to push all of the data. The customer must be aware of it. And I don't have solution. So today, I don't know. So in Germany, there is a company which is called Follow Food. They are communicating a lot about the origin. So when you are buying his tuna, or they are also producing frozen goods and so on. So when on each packaging there is a small code and a small information, you just have to tag it with your iPhone, and you will see where it's coming from. So it's a wonderful tool. So but the customer must do an action. So he must look for the information.
It's extremely complex. And I mean, the European Commission has been working on this topic for 10, 12 years, and it's still under development. So clearly, it's not in these 5-10 minutes they will be able to have a solution. But knowing about these initiatives is really, really interesting and feeds into this debate. Arthur, what is your take on this?
Well, as I said earlier, it's I follow what you are saying. I think I want to get back on what you said. You can make any data say anything if you want, and so it's how do you factor in the globality of the information? Like what are the metrics for social impact? What are the metrics? So it's complicated to have the global overview of a product. So as I said earlier, I think, and Olivier was saying as well, it's about education, awareness, communication from also, as I said, maybe the education system, maybe from the government, from the media, trying to raise the interest and to push people to challenge a little bit their assumption and to force them to look a bit deeper into what's happening. And this will in turn force companies to switch around and be forced to live up to the standards. And I think also, funnily enough, for a company like ours, it also takes actors like some of the ones that are following this webinar here. We can only do so much as a company, but if we don't have the platform into communicating the right message, then we're limited in our access. So having the possibility to spread the message, to increase our visibility, then in turn give us the capacity also to share the message a bit more. But it's always complicated to get there because the lack of legitimacy when you're a small company, people are so now overwhelmed by promises that it's very difficult for companies to get a door open. So I'm saying, and I think I speak not just for my company, But I think global actors like retail actors, like bigger institutions that can provide a platform should do it for companies that are actually doing things in a different way, and then they will be able to spread the message.
Retailers also have a tremendous power and responsibility in this respect. Okay, so we have a very lovely audience who has one question for Olivier and one question for Arthur. So I will start with a question from Olivier, which is quite specific. So how do the German companies who want to export in France deal with the new obligations to put the Triman logo and icons on their packaging?
So I have to say, sorry, I don't have all of the technical informations, but as also Christophe wrote, they have to use it. So, and for now, so the brands we are working with, so they are changing their etiquettes, so they are working on it to apply. So these 3 months on each packaging.
Thank you.
It's
sorry.
Sorry.
Please go ahead.
No, so I just said that I don't have further information. So in terms of the technical aspect and logistical and so on and so on.
Yes, it's quite a specific question. And Arthur, for you, it was a question that was asked quite at the beginning of the webinar. Have you thought about producing your drinks on site to create local value?
Yeah, it's of course this has been a question. The thing is that because I think there's 2 parts to the answer. One is to say that we want to work with the global south in general. So there is, and we're looking for products that are not available in each region. So if you source the tea in Sri Lanka, the rooibos in South Africa, and the agave syrup in Mexico, it would be very hard to have 3 points of production. In our scale, it's not always possible. But I see what's behind the question is the question of value creation in the local economy. And I think the way that we looked at it was to say, for example, in Sri Lanka has a tea culture in a certain region, but that was in a way imposed a little bit to the country. It grows very, very tasty tea, but at the same time, if you look at the potential for development outside of the tea industry for the youth in the region, there's not a lot. And I think this could be a solution here to say, or what we do, or the solution we try to provide is to say, we'll buy the tea. It doesn't matter if you transform it into a soft drinks in the country or not. As I said, it's complicated if you want to have several products, but at the same time, the money that we reinvest through projects are aimed to diversify the local economy. So to grow it from a mono-economic region to something that is no longer a reaction to the needs of another market, but also to give the purpose and the possibility for local actors to say, you know what, I actually do not want to grow tea. My passion is IT, and I want to see this area where I have the tea become the next tech hub. I don't know, but the idea is this: why just improve the existing production capacity of a mono-economic region when you can actually reinvest that same money and generate alternative growth in other sectors?
Yeah, that's a very interesting reply to that question. Okay, we have 1 minute left to this webinar, and there's one question that I would still like to be answered. It was a question from the audience, and I'll ask it to Olivier because before the webinar, we actually spoke about this a bit. So what is the reaction of buyers in organic channels when you present a product that is made in another country than France? So are they challenging automatically that it is not made in France, or are they, relatively okay with it? And you have basically 30 seconds to reply. You're muted, Olivier.
Meeting buyers, so we are always so challenged. So we always have to push quite hard to convince them with the product. So, and that's why. So if you are coming with something sometimes really legitimate, it should help. But to be honest, it takes years most of the time. So when you are coming with product from abroad, so you know, so winning the confidence and so on can take quite a long time. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. Exporting is a big challenge.
Thank you. Arthur, to add a very, very short reaction to that?
Not to this, but if I have like the last word, I would like to say that when coming to local versus international, I think as we're seeing more and more in our local countries, there is a tendency of inward looking, and which is not positive. I think for some reason it is very interesting, as we talked about, but on a more cultural level, it's actually quite scary, and the global exchanges should also be a way for global communication, global understanding to continue. I mean, we have for the first time access to every corner of the world. We can have exchanges everywhere, and the best way to work against this inward culture is to actually benefit from global exchanges, and thus leading to exchanges of culture and open all of our minds. It's a bit cheesy, but I think it's key to what is actually happening today.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Olivier. I think these are interesting last words. So notwithstanding the value of local and shared supply chains, but also looking at what happens in other cases as well, and the idea of, you know, we are in a globalized world as well. So thank you very much to all of you, to the participants, to Arthur, to Olivier, to Natexpo, Agnès, Marion, Mathilde, for having organized this webinar as well. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And on that note, I would like to wish you all a very, very good day ahead.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all and visit Natexpo next in September. As you are exhibitor or visitors, you are welcome. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.